is the Pix 11 New York Sports Nation podcast.
Appreciate everybody stopping by. John Macri of Knicks Film School, formerly of Sports Illustrated, is going to be stopping in a little bit to talk about everything going on as we approach the trade deadline. Obviously, LeBron James passing the all-time scoring mark last night, and Kyrie Irving making his debut in Dallas. Over here in the sports department, we have our usual cast of characters: Todd Ehrlich, the EP of the Pix 11 Sports Department; Mark Malusis, better known to you and I as the Moose. Gentlemen, how you guys doing today?
What's going on?
What's going on, Joe? We're doing great.
I love
Happy
it.
to be in a Twitter space.
I know. How do you feel, Todd? Do you feel lost in Twitter space right now?
I feel like a millennial. I feel like one of the cool kids. You know?
That's
I'm tweeting,
fantastic.
sort of.
Kind of. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. One of the cool things here, if you're listening, you have the opportunity to interact with us. So you can request to speak with that mic button in the bottom left corner if you're listening on the Twitter app, which is really cool. And that's what this is about. Hopefully bringing the conversation to you guys and letting you join us in the tent here. So I'll start with LeBron James last night, guys. When you look at him breaking the scoring mark, we knew it was going to happen this season. What do you think this does for his legacy?
I mean, listen. I think to me, I don't know if it. I thought it was an interesting piece, the exclusive interview he did with, I think, the Orange County Register yesterday before the game last night against Oklahoma City, where he said he's whether the record or not, he still believes he's the greatest basketball player to ever play the game, given everything that he provides a team. And I think it's the cherry on the top. I think it's different when you look at, Kareem played, 4 years in college, was dominant. They adjusted the rules. The game has evolved and changed. The three-point. I mean, there's just so many different things. Doesn't take away from what LeBron was able to accomplish. 20 years in the league. He's 38. He's averaging over 30 points per game. Utterly remarkable. Now it just adds another layer to those that will make the argument that he's the greatest player of all time. And I think he can set a mark when his career is done, to where if he plays 2 to 4 more years, where that number is sitting at, 43, 44, 45,000 points, which would be unbelievable, which I don't think we'll ever see anyone surpass in our lifetime.
Well, we didn't think we'd see anybody surpass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar either.
Game has changed, though. I mean, game has changed. It's more wide open, more offensive. It wasn't. There aren't games. Showtime was different in the 80s because you were running up and down the court. They opened up the game, less defensive-minded, three-point shooting, all those things. So, yeah, I mean, to think that you'd have to have somebody average, just think about this. I mean, you'd have to have somebody to get to 44,000 points for 22 years. You'd have to average 2,000 points a year. That's remarkable.
Your math is good, Moose.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's...
Syracuse.
Yeah, so you think about it, you have to have somebody that comes in the league at 18 or 19 and then be downright dominant from the word go that LeBron has. Yeah, you're right. No one thought anyone was going to surpass Kareem. The league has become all more offensive-minded. Maybe we'll see somebody do it, but it doesn't take away anything of what he has been able to accomplish, which is...
Moose, you're forgetting one thing.
What's that?
When they institute the 4-point shot. That's going to be a game changer. It's going to completely blow it away.
Well, and the other thing that changes it too is that nobody really plays 82 games anymore.
Right.
LeBron a couple of years ago played 82 games, and everybody celebrated that accomplishment. That's something that Michael used to do consistently, and others used to do consistently. Is load management. It's making sure you take care of the body the entire year. If you play 70 games during the course of the NBA season, you're doing pretty good. So that all affects the impact of these kind of marks, which are the career scoring marks when you total points.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change, Mark, and you touched upon it, is the 3-pointers. Kareem had 1 in his career, and so yes, so I think that's really the biggest difference in terms of getting to the scoring record. I'm curious as to how you guys feel about who is the greatest player. I think LeBron is definitely the greatest players of his generation, but I wouldn't put him above Michael, for example.
All right, that's a great time. Let me pose that question to our guest as he gets in here. I told you Jonathan Macri, Knicks Film School, was going to be joining us here. He's just popping on. I requested for him to join us as a speaker. So, the greatest NBA player of all time, does that title now belong to LeBron James after the scoring record? Johnny, you with us, bud? Oh, he went back to listener there. So we'll give him another second. I'll wait. I'll put my 2 cents in here. No, I don't think he's the greatest player ever. I agree with you, Todd, because on a night like last night, there is no way Michael Jordan lets his team lose. How do you go and break the record and then you lose?
Have you seen the Lakers this year? Terrible.
Joe, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we got you now, John. Right. Welcome to the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
This is like my second or third Twitter Spaces ever. I am not a veteran of this format, so I'm happy I just got in. LeBron, pretty good player. You want to talk about LeBron versus Jordan? I mean, I posed a Twitter poll on my feed earlier today, and I think this probably speaks more to the demographics of people following me than anything else. But I think it was about 59 or 60% had Jordan, and I gave Kareem and Bill Russell options as well, but very, very small number selected those. But I think it has to do with your age, honestly, because if you watch Jordan in the moment and you watch what he was doing as he was doing it, like, it was mythic. There was a story of quality to it, and the story never ended. It just kept going, you know. There was never any like inconvenience. Oh, how do we reconcile this or that? Even if you look at what he did in his comeback season, you know, when he played the 17 games and then lost to Orlando in the playoffs, he comes back and he leads the greatest team of all time and then does the second three-peat. LeBron, it's been messier, you know, messy in how he left Cleveland the first time and that Boston series, and then messy in the Dallas series the next year in Miami. So I think that messiness is what gets in the way, but like, I could just say, speaking personally as someone who quite literally never thought I would ever consider anybody in his class, I woke up this morning and I was like, really, I was reconciling it in a way that I don't think I ever had before. The numbers, it's not just the numbers and how he's gone about getting those numbers is overwhelming at this point, and it really just comes down to what you value. Do you value peak? Do you value, you know, not straight longevity, but longevity at a certain level? I mean, LeBron James is going to make a first-team All-NBA this year. He's 38 years old. What are we even doing here?
And that's it. That's it. You mentioned it there. He's 38 years old. He's been at this for 20 years. Yeah, and he's still playing at near his peak. You know, the scoring record, everybody will make the argument, too. Jordan took those 2 years off during his prime, which obviously hurt him. But the game was too easy to him, right? He's 6-0 in the finals, and that's the thing that'll get held against LeBron. And also, Jordan did it with one team. He didn't leave to go and make the super team like LeBron did in Miami. And even so, he wasn't the ringleader of that. Now, that's not to be said that Jordan didn't have immense talent around him in Scottie Pippen and Tony Kukoc and role players like Ron Harper and Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman, right? Like, he had talent around him, and he didn't win until they got those guys either. So I think the mythicism of Michael Jordan comes from thinking that he did it alone. But that we all know in retrospect that wasn't true either.
Yeah. I'm sorry, John. But here's the other thing. I think you hit upon a really good point. I think personal feelings or the perception of LeBron comes into the argument to a greater extent than when we look at Michael. I think social media has played into a role. I think the decision did irreparable harm to LeBron, and obviously then his reaction to being the villainous figure first year down in Miami and some of the quotes he gave to the media, and then people kind of decided to kind of look at LeBron in a certain way. There's no doubting what he has accomplished, but Joe talks about the mythicism of, or the mythical figure that Michael Jordan is. I think people put Michael up on a higher pedestal because he stuck it out in Chicago. Now, obviously, everything's changed. Free agency, player empowerment in the NBA. A lot has changed in the association over the years. But that decision and him deciding to go to Miami instead of toughening it out in Cleveland and figuring out a way, when we saw Michael do it against the Detroit Pistons, I think a lot of people look at it and looked at LeBron as taking the easy way out. And that perception really has not changed over the course of time. That's why I think you'll still have people, even with LeBron's accomplishment last night, are still going to refer to Michael as being the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I think it's more than just him leaving Cleveland. He built the first super team. And I think that takes away from it. Michael did, as Joe pointed out, accumulate pieces, but he also challenged those pieces, led those pieces when Rodman came in, kept him in line, whereas LeBron looked like he just took his talents to South Beach and took, Jordan Wade and, took some of the best players around to join him to win a championship and only win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think let me try to put this into context because I think the way LeBron went about it, joining up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in South Beach, was what was unpalatable to people. And like Moose, you bring up the decision. I think you could argue that the decision to do that show was as detrimental as anything he ever did on the court, and I would even include what he didn't do in the Dallas series in 2011. That said, I think to pretend like other great players, the other guys that we have in the list of whatever it is, top 5 or top 10, didn't win their championships. Like if we're going with the whole rings argument, that they didn't win their championships with other supremely talented players. To me, that's where I kind of draw the line. And I include Michael in that because, Scotty, say what you want about Scotty, and Scotty certainly had some things to say about this during The Last Dance and afterwards. He's a great player in his own right. I mean, where would he have ranked all time if he didn't have Michael? I mean, the fact is those guys complemented each other so well, I would argue in a way that was even better than, let's say, LeBron complimented Wade or even LeBron complimented Irving and vice versa later. I think the point is you have to kind of step back and maybe if you take the narrative out of it, I think it certainly helps LeBron. And then I think the question then shooting off of that is, because we're obviously is a narrative-driven culture now, especially with sports talk, like, are there valid reasons for some of the narratives that continue to perpetuate and exist? And again, I think that changes depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Pippen was a top 50 player of all time. Just to back up your point, he made the top 50 team.
Right, but
they were supremely talented. I agree.
Yeah, but the difference is was brought in and started in Chicago.
Yep.
And yeah, Duncan didn't win it without Ginobili and Tony Parker and then Kawhi Leonard. You need talented players around him. I guess my question is, Jonathan, is, where do you think, now that he's accomplished this, and obviously he'd like to win another NBA title, but the Lakers don't look like, unless they do something miraculous by tomorrow's NBA trade deadline, Lakers don't look like they're close to winning an NBA championship this year. How long do you think, in this day and age where we see Brady play until he's 45, how long do you think LeBron is going to play in the NBA? Does he play in the league until both of his sons are in the league?
I mean, that's what he said, right? I think the recent thing from him is it's not just one of his sons; it's both sons. I remember years. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but maybe it was a few years ago, where people would talk about the nice thing about LeBron James is he would be able to age into a role that was more similar to, to talk about another guy who ended his career on the league, is Karl Malone, right? Like LeBron has the physique, he has the body type. So if the athleticism starts to go down a little bit, well, he'll translate his or adjust his game to become maybe more of a post-up player, and maybe he's working on the shooting or whatever. Plays more small ball 5 with the way the league is headed. The thing that's so amazing to me, and why quite frankly, I just don't have a good answer to your question, because I don't know that we could possibly imagine, like, when does this slow down? He's 38 and he hasn't had to transition at all. He's doing the same things. Maybe he's lost half a step. I don't know. You sure can't tell it on some nights. I mean, look at the guy's stats since his birthday on December 30, whatever it is, 30th or 31st. I mean, the numbers are insane. He's efficient. He's doing everything he needs to do. And I think it is notable that he's doing it on quite frankly, a pretty crappy Lakers team, save for Anthony Davis, who decided not to show up and play last night, which I thought was interesting. I'm not willing to accept that his career ends with the Lakers. I think if they don't do something here in the next 24 hours, I'm not saying he asks out this summer, but I don't think it's a fait accompli, and I don't think he is willing to go down like this. And he's kind of said as much, So I wouldn't be shocked if there's maybe one more chapter of really, truly competitive basketball.
All right, John, let's talk about one of LeBron's former teammates here. He was trying to get him over there in L.A. in Kyrie Irving. I remember we spoke when the Knicks missed out on Irving and Durant back in 2019.
Yeah, so do I.
How happy are you right now that they missed out on those two guys?
I mean, if you're asking me as just my own personal, thought. I mean, look, we don't have to get into the I don't know what, the yin and the yang of Kyrie. That's neither here nor there. He's a very divisive personality, and I think there are some people who admire how he goes out of his way to, see his mind. He doesn't care what happens, and there are some other people, and I kind of fall into this camp that maybe don't think so much of it. I think. I'm not saying anything revelatory here. I can't imagine having to try to go about operating and coaching and playing on a basketball team in which one of your fundamental cogs, you kind of have to go week to week with him in terms of like, well, is he going to be all in this week? I mean, Kyrie had a statement, what was it, 2 weeks ago, in which he said something about like, we don't have anybody else here that's halfway in.
That was, I think that was KD actually, when he was saying he was looking at the starting five around him, and he says, "You expect me to win with just me and Edmund Sumner out here."
So he said that, but then I think Kyrie had a quote. I don't think I'm mistaken. I may be, but even more recently than that, in which he was talking about how everybody there was fully bought in. And the whole thing, and then he goes and requests a trade because of the contract situation. I just don't know how you're supposed to build a team like that. And like, look, I watched this dude put up 22 points in the fourth quarter or whatever it was on my team 2 weeks ago. When he gets going, it is a sight to behold, and I don't know that there's too many people in NBA history who could do what he does in the way he does it when he's hot. That said, I get it's a league that's all about talent. I don't know how you're supposed to rely on this guy, and it is, talk about things that are fascinating to me. I cannot wait to see how this unfolds in Dallas because, we just talked about LeBron. I personally have Luka as kind of the next guy to fill that seat, the next guy to wear the crown in the league as like the best player. And the Mavs are playing fast and loose with his career because, he's getting pretty close to the point where players typically ask out. And they're going to be in an interesting situation this summer. Do they sign Kyrie long-term? I'm sure he's going to want a long-term deal. I don't know. But to your point, I'm happy it's not the Knicks.
Right. The interesting thing, and you mentioned Kyrie makes his debut tonight in L.A. against the Clippers for the Mavericks. Luka dealing with that ankle injury. He's not going to be there. Jonathan, we can look ahead to the summer. If the Lakers don't trade Westbrook and his contract expires, maybe Kyrie then signs with the Lakers in free agency and LeBron gets his guy. Who knows how all that plays out. The rest of this season, the gamble that Mark Cuban took, do you think it works in the here and now for Dallas with Kyrie and Luka together on the court offensively? Offensively, it'll work. What about leading to playoff success?
I think the biggest question the entire year with Dallas is kind of what's going on with Christian Wood. And I think that question becomes even more important now. We've heard rumors over the last few weeks that if they could not come to an agreement on an extension with him, that they would perhaps look to move him before the deadline. Now, obviously, we're less than 24 hours away now as we're talking. And the Wood piece of it is fascinating to me because that's kind of going all in on offense, right? To play the Doncic. And if you're going to go with Christian Wood, you're going to probably want to play Christian Wood at center. I think Kleber coming back will help. Maybe you mix and match Wood and Kleber together at times, play them apart at times. But it really does become an offense-defense question because, like, just Doncic, Kyrie, Christian Wood, put those three dudes on the floor together with two shooters. maybe once he's back. I don't know. We haven't really seen much of them together. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to stop that team, but I don't know who that team is supposed to stop, depending on who the other two pieces are. Since Finney Smith is now playing in Brooklyn, and he was arguably their most versatile defender. It's crazy how, we talk about all these big names, and a playoff series with, the Mavs versus someone could come down to a guy like Josh Green, who has emerged for them this year as kind of a little bit more than a 3-and-D wing. He could corner, he could put the ball on the floor. I'm probably a little more bullish on them than most because I think that highly of Doncic, but I don't, I'm not going to sit here and predict that they'll make it to, even like the conference finals again like they did last year.
Before we get to your team, what did you think of what the Nets were able to get back for Kyrie? Were you surprised at how much they got back?
I wasn't because it, the saying goes, all it takes is one, but not really, because if there's just one bidder, then you could kind of slow play it. But it was clearly more than one bidder here. I mean, I think we heard Phoenix offered Chris Paul and first, and then they reportedly, the Nets countered with the request of 3 firsts. I guess that was the end of those conversations. But the Lakers, I personally, you could believe the reports, you could not believe them, but it's been reported that they put on the table Russell Westbrook and those two future firsts. Like, that's a real offer. I think if push came to shove, they would have included one of the young players. So I think given that there were some other desperate teams out there, and if you look at the Lakers, you want to talk about the Clippers, what their offer might have been. Like, these are teams with a lot of pressure that they're, to win, not next year, to win this year. So because of those other teams' presence in the market, I think it's still impressive what the Nets got, but I think in context, it kind of makes more sense.
And let's talk a little Knicks, Jonathan. Sure. All right, NBA trade deadline tomorrow. Let's first start with Barrett. What do you make of what RJ Barrett this year has been after signing the big contract extension in the offseason?
I think he's had his ups and downs. I'll try to be polite. The thing that I've been bothered by the most, because he's actually been, if you look at the total numbers, he's actually slumped the last couple of games in particular, so I think maybe this might not be true anymore. But for the most part this year, he's been more efficient than he was last year. And his usage has stayed high, so that's good. It's everything else, the other parts of his game that have kind of tailed off. Like, he actually had a really nice game passing the ball last night against the Magic. It didn't translate into assists because guys just missed open jumpers. But we've seen his passing come around a little bit of late, but that was an issue for a lot of the year. The biggest thing for me is the defense, because you look at his contract that was signed this summer, and then shortly thereafter, Tyler Hero and Jordan Poole, who are ostensibly 6-men, type players, but they play big roles for their teams. Those guys got more money, and a lot of Knicks fans at the time said, well, that makes RJ Barrett a bargain contract because unlike those two players, he plays both ends of the floor. And unfortunately, that has not been the reality this year. I mean, he's been, I don't know if he's been the worst defensive player in the Knicks, like Walt Frazier said the other night, but it has not been a strength. And he's had some really not so great moments on the defensive end. And I'm not really sure why, because we've seen this player be a good defensive player. 2 years ago, certainly, even last year, if you want to point to it. That's the biggest concern to me is, like, why is that happening? Is it something physically? Is he, conserving energy for the offensive end of the floor? But I these next 26 games are going to be very important for me personally to see how he can try to help his team win in ways other than scoring. And I think that's a big stretch for him.
All right, so the Knicks wouldn't move Barrett when it came to Donovan Mitchell in the offseason trade deadline coming up. Obviously, Cam Reddish may be on the market. What are we looking at here? Do you think the Knicks make a big move?
No, I'll say so. No, you know what? It's a seller's market right now. There's teams are looking for they're all looking for the same thing. Anybody who's trying to win playoff games this year or make the playoffs. And there's a lot of those teams. That's the problem with the play-in. It introduces the incentive to go for 10, where that incentive didn't used to be there. And there's some of these players on the market, but teams their price points are remaining high, and there's a very few real difference makers that might hit the market. I mean, OG Anunoby is the name that's been talked about for a while. Toronto's asking price on him is apparently sky high. I don't think the Knicks want to pay that right now. I don't think anyone's going to pay that right now because teams that may be tempted to give some unprotected draft assets to Toronto for OG Anunoby, well, those same teams might want to be in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes if he hits the market this summer and he asks out. So you're not going to, you're going to keep your powder dry for that. So I don't think the Knicks are going to go for him. They'll move off of Cam, but I think, I'll parrot what Ian Begley said to me the other day when we were on a show together. I think it's probably going to wind up being something like Cam for some not very good player and like a second round pick. And you just wash your hands of it and move on.
I want to stop with OG Anunoby for a second there because you mentioned the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. Obviously, the Nets aren't going to be in that sweepstakes because they have him right now. Do you think they make a big move and possibly make a play for Anunoby, given the fact they got to please Durant and make a run while they got him?
I think they could. I think with the draft pick they got from the Mavs, that future draft pick, and I believe they could trade. They have a Philly pick to trade that isn't set to convert for a little while, and then I think they have one of their own picks that they could trade that's off in the distant future. So they have what it takes, I think, to get Anunoby. The guy that I'd maybe be more curious for them about is Van Vliet because I like Dinwiddie. I think Dinwiddie's a good player. Dinwiddie's obviously succeeded in Brooklyn, but if I had a chance to get Van Vliet, I would kick the tires on what that might cost me, whether it's – and I think part of that's interesting is it Dinwiddie going out as the outgoing salary in that deal? I'm pretty sure the money works there. Or you could also maybe try to see if, what – I try not to laugh when I say this. See what Toronto's appetite is for Ben Simmons, who might be the worst contract in the league, but if you attach all of your draft assets to him – can you get back like a Van Vliet and a Gary Trent Jr.? I don't think Toronto would do that, but that's a phone call that I would make to see maybe, who knows, maybe they think they could rehabilitate that guy's career, which is, again, not something that I would try.
Who's the next guy, Jonathan, when you look at for the Knicks? Because you'd heard about Donovan Mitchell a year plus out, and then they had the opportunity. They didn't want to pay the price that Danny Ainge was looking for. And we've seen Donovan Mitchell do what he has always done now, a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Where's the next disgruntled guy for the Knicks who've got the 11 first-round draft choices in the next 7 years that they can use that draft capital to try and take and add to the level of the upper echelon talent to take this group to the next level?
It's so dependent, I think, on what happens in the playoffs. Because there's a lot of teams that think that they should be in the running for a championship this year. And someone is probably not going to get out of the first round. I don't have like an obvious name to me that we're going to be looking for. I mean, do you consider Zach LaVine a star? I personally, he's a star, but is he the difference maker the Knicks want? I don't think so.
Karl Anthony Towns, Minnesota.
I mean, that's the name that I think people have been speculating about for a while because you got the CAA connection and you have, obviously Tibbs coached him. Gerson Rosas, who's an executive with the Knicks right now, was the executive in Minnesota. Is that the guy you want if you're the Knicks? I don't know. I think I could see that happening. I hope, my own personal 2 cents as someone who roots for this team, I hope they wait it out and try to wait for the right move. That said, we know that there's pressure. The owner was pretty clear when he went on radio a couple weeks ago. He expects to see continued progress. We'll see. They'll do something this summer. They'll do something this summer for sure. I wish I had a name for you. My dream has always been Embiid, but I think Philly's going to give that another couple of years.
All right. Jonathan Macri, I appreciate you taking the time. We went a couple minutes over here on you. Check them out, Knicks Film School, and it'll be fun. We'll see if they make the playoffs here this year. Jalen Brunson has been a nice surprise, and maybe he gets an all-star nod with Kevin Durant going down. We'll see.
It would be cool. I appreciate you having me, guys. It was great to talk to you, and we'll gear up for an exciting exciting next 24 hours.
Thanks, John.
Later, guys.
All right, everybody. So this week, most of our attention will be looking back, I should say, at the Super Bowl come Sunday night on New York Sports Nation. Moose, why don't you tell them what we got lined up?
We have Ralph Vacchiano's going to join us, cover the NFC East for Fox this year, obviously formerly from SNY and the New York Daily News. He's going to join us, working on a couple other things Sunday night for 11 o'clock for New York Sports Nation. Justin Walters will be live on right after that game goes final and joining Joe and myself. So action-packed week here at Pix 11, no question. Tomorrow we'll be all over the NBA trade deadline.
Todd, any other bow you want to put on this one on your first Twitter Spaces?
I'm just so happy to be alongside you guys in the Twitter sphere. Thanks for putting this together, Joe.
Absolutely. And everybody tuning in, thanks for listening. Make sure you follow Pix 11 Sports. We'll have more of these Twitter Spaces. Hopefully you guys join the conversation next time. That little mic button in the bottom left. We'll love to hear your thoughts, obviously, on New York sports from all those passionate fans out there. Until next time, everybody, thanks for listening.
See you guys.